Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to present my dissertation titled The Implementation Guide, Challenging Impacts in Organizations. I will start with an overview of the motivation behind this work. Despite of the well-known benefits of BIM, many organizations still face challenge in adopting BIM. Key barriers include resistance to change, a lack of structured knowledge, and lack of strategic planning. To avoid failure of the process, we identify an opportunity to structure the knowledge regarding this topic, focus on overcome this challenge. The main objective of this work is to establish a foundation for developing a implementation guide, focus on organization context. So we also have complementary objectives. First, to organize existing knowledge on the subject through an in-depth literature review. Second, to collect and analyze best practice by conducting interview with industry experts. And third, to synthesize this knowledge into a systematic and structured workflow for implementation. In terms of methodology, our data collection was divided into two phases. First, we collect data through literature review, analyzing books, papers, theses, and dissertations regarding this topic. The second phase involved data collection through focus group and interview with BIM consultants and organizations. After collecting this data, we perform an analysis and lead to critical recommendations for implementation. Now let's move on the data collection. Start with an overview. First, we conduct a focus group with individuals from academic institutions and organizations. It was an interactive real-time discussion where we present the first draft of the BIM guide and receive feedbacks. The second part involved interview with BIM consultants and organizations. As you can see, we interview 8 consultants from Brazil and Portugal, each with different market backgrounds and areas of expertise. Additionally, Additionally, we interviewed 5 companies from both countries representing various sectors such as architecture, engineering, construction, and inspection. This stage of data collection aimed to validate our proposed framework and gather real-world experience. After the interview, we conducted a cross-analysis of the responses. The color coding indicates the relative importance assigned by each group in these tables. Now I will focus only on one table, the main one. Regarding perceived challenge, both groups emphasize resistance to change as a marginal implementation challenge. However, the other challenge differ. Consultants mentioned industry-wide issues like lack of BIM knowledge and difficulties in managing BIM contracts. In contrast, organizations were more focused on technical challenges, such as complexity of selecting new technology and practical aspects of implementation. All these analyses culminating in a list of recommendations for implementation. These recommendations were extracted from the interview, but were organized and analyzed, inspired in the 8-step for change, a change management model proposed by Cotter. This model emphasized that successful change requires following 8 steps, which we found applicable for implementation process discussed. We compiled our recommendation into a table outlining specific guidelines for each one of these phases, and this guidelines serve as a foundation for our guide. Now let's move on the guide structure itself. As we saw previously, we identify 4 stages for implementation, each one with 2 or 3 essential steps. This framework was presented and validated by the interview, and in this version, we have incorporated the feedbacks. The first stage is preparing, divided into 2 steps, diagnostic and gap analysis. The second stage, planning, consists on 3 steps. First, strategy is developed. Next, the roadmap is created, which outline action plans and timelines. The third step involves developing BIM tactics, selecting process, infrastructure, and organizational structure. The third stage is executing, which has 2 steps. The first is implementing BIM, which is when the company train personnel, manage process, enable digital tools, and develop policies. And the second step is testing BIM, meaning running the pilot projects and assess effectiveness. Finally, the fourth stage is monitoring. Here you define the metrics, track them, and review the entire implementation process over the year to track maturity progress. Now I will present the phase 1, preparing. When our organization decided to implement BIM, it doesn't start from scratch, but rather from its current stage. state. So that's why preparation is crucial. Here we divided the preparing into two steps, the diagnostic and the gap analysis. During the diagnostic, the organization analyzed the internal and external aspects. Our guide starts about this step, organizing the information that one should search for perform in-depth diagnosis. As you can see, we show 4 different aspects of assessment. With information gathered during this diagnostic, they move to the gap analysis when they identify the difference between the organization current and desired states. So regarding the gap analysis step, we identify the 2 tools are usually related as critical for this phase. The SWOT matrix for strategic analysis and the BIM maturity matrix for understanding the ability to deliver BIM. And that's why the main outcome of this phase is the proposed BIM maturity matrix. Typically, BIM maturity matrices are used as a tool for this gap analysis in implementation context. However, during our research, we found that many of the available matrices were often focused on project context rather than on the organizational context. Considering this and the fact that we did all the research regarding the aspects to be analyzed for implementation, we decided to propose a new maturity assessment for matrices designed to be both easily to apply and actionable, meaning that it can be directly used to inform the next steps of the implementation. It is divided in 4 key areas: process, policies, people, and technology. Each of these areas has a specific aspect to be analyzed. Each of these aspects has different criteria. Now let's move on to the second phase, planning. As we can see in this image, we identify 3 steps for the implementation planning. It starts with the strategic step, where the organization defines the long-term planning and the broad perspective of the future. It continues with the roadmap step, when the organization defines the actions and schedule for the strategic planning, and finish with the tactical plan, where the practical and detailed decisions are made. Through the development of this phase, in our guide, we made significant developments. The most important one is the roadmap, which we will present next. Also, I will be mentioning 3 of the developments made for support the tactical decisions. Regarding the proposed roadmap, it serves as a high-level overview that outlines the direction and critical milestones of the time. We had access to real case roadmap, which provide us with information on relevant actions and timelines. Based on this, we developed the proposal. Our proposal is given as an example with many of the common actions in the implementation, and it can easily be used as a reference to organization during this planning. However, we also show the process of construction this roadmap to allow organization to build their own roadmap based on its own assessment. So the image illustrates just as an example how an organization X uses the maturity matrix to assess its software maturity. This analysis established specific objectives to overcome this gap, which were then transformed into actions. After being transformed into action, the organization must prioritize each action and indicate the timeline for completion. It was recommended 3 options for short, medium, and long-term actions. It is also recommended indicators be established to monitor these actions. This is the entire roadmap where you can clearly see the 4 steps for define goals, actions, deadlines, and resources. As was mentioned before, now I will approach some of the developments made to help the tactical decisions. The first one we can mention is the matrix for evaluating and selecting BIM software. The idea is that the organization carries out rounds of evaluation of this software internally. To ensure a common interpretation, a brief analysis instruction was developed for each criterion, with a clear and well-defined range of evaluation for each one. Another development was the BIM profiling responsibility table, which aims to enable the organization that use the guide to define these profiles and distribute BIM responsibilities. This table not only identified the main profiles reported in the literature, but also identified the primary BIM responsibility within an organization context. The proposal used the RACI method to assign the role of each profile in these tasks, serving as a base for the organization. Finally, tables were also developed to assist this organization in identifying and managing the risk involved in the implementation. Risk management is essential element for change management, but mostly is overlooked for the BIM guides. In this image, we only show the technical risk, but we also identify risk management risk, financial risk, legal risk, and environment risk. The first table identifies this risk, their causes and potential impacts, also demonstrating their mention in the different sources and interviews. And the second table provides potential treatments for each one of these risks identified. After the planning phase, we enter in the execution phase of the BIM implementation. The first outcome of the phase is recommendation for developing BIM training. The importance of preparing people for BIM is highlighted when challenges related to people are the most mentioned during the interviews. So when addressing initiative to train people, interview mentioned 3 types of BIM training education initiatives. It's common to consider only the usual internal training in which the company are hired to provide target training. Although this is a valid strategy, interviews also reported investing in external training and certification as a relevant step to search for a good practice. In other engagement initiatives, such as sharing content through internal information channels, are also highlighted. Another discussion is about the need to address different fronts behind software during this training. So to highlight this conclusion, we show an example of an in-house training plan in which 3 training modules are defined and dropping sections for our support. Another action that occurs during the execution phase is the development of internal standards and procedures. So the BIM manual is reported as an important document, internal document that document the BIM standards with an organization, and it's essential to ensure that all internal stakeholders work consistently. So therefore, we have organized the information available from different sources about this document, the BIM manual, in order to provide a table with a structure for this document. And the table also contains the recommended content and also resources that can be used for more platform development. Finally, the execution phases where pilot projects are developed. For this step, we also organize the recommendation we found on how to develop pilot projects. And finally, let's discuss phase 4, monitoring. This step is essential for ensuring that the implementation delivers the expected results and confirm that the BIM journey benefits and success are done. So research indicates that organization risk reverting to previous method if they do not see tangible benefits from BIM adoption. So also the interviews data allows us to conclude that many organizations struggle with defining and monitoring these metrics. To address this, we recommend defining metrics based on expected benefits by the organization. Use cases we had as mentioned this strategy, which is also the base of the NatSpec tool we recommend in this subchapter. So we use this tool to identify some metrics for different type of organization, just to showcase the organization using or guide the importance of defining and monitoring these metrics. Finally, we can present some conclusions. Regarding the drivers of BIM adoption, it was interesting to notice that consultants believe that it has changed over the past few years, 5 years, 10 years. Previously, they say that BIM implementation was primarily motivated by innovation, whereas now they believe that it is mainly driven by external pressure, government pressure, market pressure. So this shift highlights a new group of adopters that may require more attention to challenge they face. Another conclusion was that resistance to change is the biggest barrier to BIM implementation nowadays, requiring change management strategies. It was also highlighted the importance of monitoring BIM beyond financial measure and based on expected benefits. And finally, we conclude that BIM impacts on the organization finally we conclude that BIM impacts on the organization structure, requiring human resources and marketing adjustment to ensure the intangible benefits. So the main outcomes of this work was the foundation for the BIM implementation guide for organization. Inside this guide, we presented a maturity assessment matrix, the roadmap proposal, and the 4-stage framework with clear steps. But we also developed some complementary outcomes, such as the BIM software evaluation tool, matrix of BIM roles and responsibilities, risk matrix with mitigation strategies, example of training planning, example of strategic statement for statement development, identification of factors influencing the perception of value of BIM. And some future developments that we highlight is the development of graphics and the adaptation of the structure for a guide format. We also propose conduct validation of the framework and recommendation with larger example of market experts, since we only interview Brazilian and Portuguese companies and consultants for now. We also propose customize the framework and guidelines for different organizations and industry sectors. We can also see, as a future development, collect data from organizations to validate the implementation metrics that we identify. And finally, we can point that we can test the maturity matrix and roadmap in practical scenarios to assess and adjust the effectiveness. So this is my work. Thank you for your attention.